Pressure on systemic power. The threads of power. Wealth inheritance fortunes are preserved through trusts, tax loopholes, and intermarriage of elites. That's the most direct passing of the baton. Control of narratives, media, education, religion, and law all repeat the idea that the system is natural and must be obeyed. So, gatekeeping institutions like banking, courts, property law, and politics all act like locks on the same door. If you pull one of those threads hard enough, let's say wealth inheritance through a radical tax overhaul, the whole thing can start to wobble. But, elites have built-in redundancy, so if one rope frays, the others keep the tension going. Why does it all look stronger than it really is? Well, there's this illusion of inevitability, right? Like, this is just how the world works. And honestly, that thought alone is enough to discourage rebellion. Divide and buffer. Ordinary people are split by race, class, or culture, so they don't unite to tug the thread together. So, reinforcement through crisis. When things really fall apart, like during wars, depressions, or pandemics, the system actually uses all that chaos to tighten its grip, not loosen it. It's kind of wild, but that's how it works. Fragility beneath the surface. The irony here is, for all the appearance of complexity, power is actually pretty brittle. History shows us that once enough people stop believing in the narrative, or, once financial collapse hits the elite class, the rope just snaps. That's why revolutions often seem to come out of nowhere. Because the thread is strong, but it's definitely not infinite. Wealth transmission. Inheritance and tax havens, they're really the lifeblood of elite continuity. Generational wealth transfer keeps their power alive. If that system is heavily disrupted, like say through wealth taxes or global clampdowns on offshore havens, the concentration of power shrinks fast. Then there's corporate capture. Family dynasties use corporations to shield and grow wealth. But if you break that cycle, you basically cut the arteries of influence. The big weakness here, it only works as long as governments play along, and honestly, financial transparency is like kryptonite in this game. Let's talk about narrative control. When it comes to media ownership, just a handful of companies shape like 90% of all news and entertainment. But if decentralized media keeps growing, think independent creators, blockchain news, peer-to-peer platforms, their grip really starts to weaken. Education systems are another piece. History is often taught in a way that just validates the existing power structure. But, alternative education movements are already poking holes in that. The weakness? Truth spreads way faster now. Sometimes just one viral moment can undo decades of propaganda. Debt and financial systems. This is a big one. Credit and loans, for example. Elites don't just own assets, they actually own the debt too. When regular people owe, elites profit. And dollar dominance, so much of global control hinges on the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. If that thread snaps, maybe through BRICS Plus or digital currencies, the elite's monopoly really starts to wobble. The weakness here? Debt bubbles and currency shifts can, honestly, collapse under their own weight. So, let's talk about energy and resources. For like a century, oil, gas, and mining barons have basically been the power brokers, but, a real shift to decentralized renewables actually threatens their empires. Now, when it comes to water and food, whoever controls these has a lot of leverage. But climate instability is making their grip pretty shaky. Here's the thing. Technology can decentralize energy and food production, and that really undermines those old monopolies. Social division is huge. Race, class, culture, division is honestly the shield of power. If marginalized groups and the struggling working class ever unite, the elite buffer just collapses. Distraction politics like wedge issues keep people busy fighting each other instead of the real problem. But when people stop buying the bait, solidarity actually becomes a weapon. The weakness here? Solidarity movements, civil rights, labor unions, global protests. They all show that once people recognize the trick, division just loses its bite. Now looking at the big picture, the system is strong because all these threads are braided together. But every braid has a weakest strand. If just one thread snaps, maybe wealth transmission, debt systems, or narrative control, the others have to strain even harder until, eventually, the whole rope unravels. Alright, so let's get into it. Unraveling the threads. Wealth transmission. Yeah, let's choke the pipeline. First, we gotta push for wealth transparency. That means demanding public registries of trusts, shell companies, and offshore accounts. It's already happening in some parts of Europe, so it's totally possible. Next, buy local, not global. If we shift our spending away from corporations tied to dynasties, every single dollar we keep in small business circulation actually weakens the elite reinvestment loop. Also, why not crowdfund alternatives? We can use co-ops, credit unions, and decentralized platforms to replace those big banks that thrive on elite wealth control. And here's a real action step. People power, create, or join local financial co-ops or credit unions. When we do that, real money moves away from Wall Street. Narrative control. Let's hijack the story. Start by giving an independent media boost, share, fund, and amplify smaller outlets and creators instead of the legacy media giants. Then there's curriculum hacking. Think community-led classes, online people's universities, or even TikTok and YouTube explainers that fill in the history and policy gaps schools usually leave out. And don't underestimate meme warfare. Humor cuts through propaganda way faster than lectures. So mocking false narratives is actually a weapon. Finally, people power again. Treat every post or share as micromedia activism. Viral truth bombs can really dismantle decades of control. Debt and financial systems. Flip the leverage. Now let's strike against predatory debt by organizing collective refusals to pay exploitative loans. Student debt movements already model this. We can also look into crypto and alternative systems. Not those hype coins, but stable, community-driven digital currencies and barter systems that bypass banks. It's time to push for debt jubilee ideas and normalize the discussion of canceling illegitimate debt. Historic societies did this regularly after all. And let's not forget about people power action. We can build neighborhood-level bartering networks to reduce reliance on credit and debt entirely. Energy and resources. Decentralized survival. Consider microgrids, solar panels, wind, or shared neighborhood batteries. Each small network reduces elite-controlled energy dependency. Community farming is another step forward with urban gardens, co-op farms, and food sovereignty programs cutting into big agriculture and grocery monopolies. We also need to focus on water defense, protecting local water rights from privatization by companies like Nestle. Here's a people power action for you. Turn one backyard or empty lot into food production, unlinking survival from corporate systems. Social division and the wedge. We need cross-issue coalitions, uniting climate activists, workers, and racial justice groups around shared enemies like wealth hoarders, polluters, and war profiteers. Anti-distraction training is crucial to teach people how propaganda manipulates them into fighting neighbors instead of elites. We must rebuild solidarity rituals through music, sports, and culture as common spaces where division loses oxygen. And hey, why not host cross-community events as a people power action to rewire relationships across divides? Movement structure. We start with Phase 1, awareness, exposing the threads through viral content and storytelling. Then comes Phase 2, alternatives, creating co-ops, gardens, barter systems, and media hubs. Phase 3 is pressure, where we make collective demands on policy, tax havens, debt relief, and transparency. Finally, Phase 4, realignment. When enough threads are frayed, the rope of elite dominance weakens, and new systems fill the void. This isn't about one giant revolution day, it's about millions of small withdrawals of legitimacy and resources from the system until the threads snap.